And welcome back to episode number 3 of Club Conversations. It's a very exciting episode that is going to be quite different. So I hope you're ready for it. I know this is going to be quite a shocker for everyone. So tune in because it's going to be quite the doozy. So on this episode, it's about customer retention strategies, keeping your audience engaged. We're going to dive deep into the art of science and customer retention because we know while acquiring new customers is often the focus, keeping your existing customers engaged is where true long-term success is really built. We're going to share actionable strategies for increasing customer loyalty, maintaining engagement, and turning one-time buyers into lifelong advocates. From loyalty programs and personalized marketing to handling customer feedback and providing top-tier service, this episode is going to cover how to foster meaningful relationships that drive business growth. So enough about the episode description. What if you're watching, which you're probably not watching this video right now because we have very few subscribers compared to our podcast offering, but we have Abigail Thompson on the podcast. She is a graphic designer for Club Creative, and you're going to start seeing both her and one of our project managers, David Neal, on this podcast more because we're shifting the gears a little bit. And Abby, do you want to kind of talk about what we're going to be doing moving forward?
Yes, I would love to. And hello to all of the lovely people watching and listening out there. Well, this podcast is called Club Conversations. And so, as a team internally, we have just been talking a lot about basically what Caleb discusses on the podcast. It's part of our everyday vernacular, it's part of our everyday conversations as a team. And so we thought, what better way to just kind of enhance the podcast experience for both viewing and listening than to just bring in more of a conversational element. Yeah, it's perfect. It's like we're teed up, ready to go. I don't know the correct golf metaphor here because Caleb.
That's pretty close.
Okay.
Teed up is a pretty good pun right there. So you're already kicking off great. So you got the golf puns already going.
I'm trying my best. Golf novice for sure. But yeah, we just wanted to create a more conversational experience. I think Caleb talks about this a lot, but in the marketing world, especially, things can feel a little bit like snake oil salesman-y. And that's something that our team is kind of just really passionate to not do. We want things to actually be helpful and fun, and so, yeah, it's just about kind of bringing a more conversational aspect to the podcast.
That's awesome. Well, it's going to be a great conversation moving forward. We'll have the man, the myth, legend, David Neal here shortly in a couple episodes. So we're gonna test it out. We're gonna see who's more popular, Abby or David, and then they're really vying for the co-host spot here. So we'll see.
My money's on David for sure.
That's fair. We have a great team. So some key stats that I found really interesting when I was doing some research on this topic of customer retention, diving right in, Abby, I thought it was really fascinating because we see a lot, right, when we work with clients across customer retention and acquisition. What I found was really fascinating is the cost of acquisition versus retention. It's actually 5 to 7 times more expensive to acquire new customers than it is to retain existing ones, which is really fascinating.
Yeah, for sure. And I kind of wonder why that is. I guess you just have to do so much work on the front end to kind of build that trust with people. And in the marketing world, whenever you're building trust and you're getting your name out there, it costs money, right? I mean, you're all the things you talk about on the podcast, like you're advertising, you're on social media, you're doing email marketing, whatever it may be. And all that kind of adds up, whether it's in dollars or it's in the cost of your time. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
100%. So I think it's really fascinating because, we'll talk through let's talk through kind of customer retention. I think it's a really good topic that we can talk through. But then one thing that we haven't really talked about that I'm really kind of interested in adding into this conversation is the customer retention element within the graphic side, right? Because something that we see pretty often, right? You have someone's familiar with the brand or the logo or the colors, but I think it's something that we kind of fail to talk about from a marketing perspective of it being important. So, for you, we can talk through the customer retention side, but what does customer retention look like from a branding perspective or graphics? I think that's a really important point to look at.
Yeah, that's really good. Well, I think I'm going to probably say the word trust over and over and over again. But the visual part of a brand identity is oftentimes the thing that people get to know first, right? Beyond the tonality of your brand voice or anything like that, what even you're selling or offering. We live in a very digital and visual world. And so all of those things kind of are the front door to your business. So, yeah, I feel like on the acquisition side, having a brand message that is clear or fun or whatever. It just really communicates your personality and it's done well. Even if it's not on trend, but if you have like color theory, if you have great balanced typography, if you have just an authentic presence in your business, all of those things make people feel really welcome and it kind of enhances the possibility and the likelihood that they are going to trust your business. And then on the retention side, I mean, it's just like whenever you get to know your friends or your family, right? You go over to Aunt Sue's house and you know that she has all of the chickens in her kitchen or whatever it may be. Like you just start to get to know people and you know what their style is, you know their personality, you know even the type of advice they're going to give you, right? Depending on who they are. And so I think that's what makes people stay, right? Because you can advertise and you can look really good and like welcome people in the front door and be like, hi, I'm going to serve you these amazing cookies and we're going to have coffee every time. But then if you don't live up to that, and if the cookies are like stale and day old, right? And then the coffee is just like burnt and overdone, people are not going to come back. And obviously, those are like really silly images and metaphors, but yeah, your
I,
acquisition part is being to a standard that welcomes people in, but then the retention side is actually making sure that what you're offering and what looks good is actually something of value.
100%. And you say they're simple examples, but I think they're so true, right? We see that every day within our business, the clients that we serve, both in their interactions and then kind of how we serve them. Right? We have some clients that had an incredible experience and we tried to give that best experience to every client. And sometimes we failed to deliver that from some rhyme or reason, right? And what's fascinating is word does spread around town, right? Someone has a really great experience, it's the first thing they say. Someone has a really bad experience, and it's also the first thing to say. So it not only does it really drive into the profitability approach, but it really also leads into that aspect of how someone views you in future interactions. Now, I did see a statistic from HubSpot that I thought was really fascinating too, because within customer retention, right? The goal of customer retention is like how can we keep customers over time, ensuring repeat purchases and continued engagement. And I think it's important because it helps keep customers loyal and engaged. But not only does that, but it also increases the customer lifetime value, which in my opinion, it's a really fascinating statistic because you're taking the total revenue a customer generates over their entire relationship with your brand, and you're looking at it not from a like per month standpoint or per purchase, but a how much are they worth in the long run. And I found it really fascinating when I pulled a statistic because according to HubSpot, retaining customers obviously is cheaper and more profitable in the long run, but repeat customers actually spend on average 67% more than new customers, which is even crazier. But I mean, I think we see that in both our business and our clients' business. So it
Yeah.
makes sense, but it's kind of drives home the fact of, hey, this is something that we need to look at.
Yes, yeah, for sure. Well, again, like if you are actually delivering what you say you're going to deliver and you treat your clients like the people that they are and you take the time to get to know their business and what strengths they bring into the marketplace, people can people can feel that. Your clients can feel that and it is a different experience. I think that's one of the things that this is a small business plug, but that I I just really love about kind of interacting with smaller businesses, both as a small business and then like talking to other small businesses, because you really just get that personable approach and you do get to like feel that value over time. And you also get to develop a relationship. Like I think of one of our clients that we've had, I mean, for at least 2 or 3 years now. And it's just really fun because from like an agency side, the longer you're with a client, I feel like the more creative you get to be with them because
Mm-hmm.
you know them so well. And that's really rewarding. And then they trust you if you like have a new idea to pitch, and then marketing's kind of always fluid and changing. And so whenever you're bringing ways that you can help your clients grow, they trust you, right? Because they know you know them. You get to be creative, you get to be dynamic, stay agile, all those things. But yeah.
100%. Well said. Well said. So you bring up a really good point on the small business side, right? Because we get a lot of exposure to both small and big companies. Obviously, it's quite the different animal on both ends, quite the different challenges and problems and fun things that we get to solve.
Yes.
Now, I'm going to throw something to you because I think when we work with big clients, obviously we get bigger budgets, we get more resources, we get more fun ideas, a little bit more creative typically. But what's really fascinating is if you think about it from a long term perspective, like you listen to Spotify, right? Like you're on Spotify,
Yes.
great. I'd say most of us are. If you're not on Spotify, you need to ditch Apple Music because we don't like Apple Music anymore. We're on
Oh,
Spotify. So
wow. Cool.
big plug for Spotify. Yep. So we added some users for them. So I always find it fascinating because Apple Music obviously does this as well, but Spotify, in my opinion, kind of became the first one to do this, where they basically took personalized playlists and they helped you discover weekly or wrapped and I mean, it's the same thing with Netflix, right? Like they're using now AI to look at how long you're watching shows and things like that. And I think it's fascinating, right? Because as a small business, as both an owner and interactions, it's really easy to look at the small granular things and say, well, this ad isn't performing or this, these little aspects. But it's really interesting if you think about it, right? If we operated our business like a Spotify, what are we doing in a long run to understand what our customers like and don't like and how that's kind of helping or providing a disadvantage for us? And
Yeah.
using that to help us build better customers, relationships, and long-term revenue, right?
Yeah.
Because how many times as businesses do we actually look at it from a broad perspective outside of the day-to-day and say, okay, like what do our customers really love that we do and what do they not like and how do we adjust that, right? Because it's a really important point that I think a lot of people fail to miss, including myself.
Yeah. Well, and to really think, I mean, your job as an agency, our job as an agency, we're really in the service industry, right? Like we are there to help our clients grow because we believe in them, because we believe in what they offer to the world. And so, yeah, we want to take the time again to treat them not just as a business, but get to know the personality of their brand, get to know the actual people behind it, so that we can help their customers and their clients be better served too, right? And so that takes paying attention and, yeah, like doing things that are going to be enjoyable to the clients and things like that. Um,
100%.
yeah. So,
And I
and I love
think
like the Spotify playlist thing too,
I know
because
it's like such a great idea. I mean, you think about like Netflix, which Netflix I have a beef with because they've changed everything again. So I don't know if you've been on Netflix recently, but like it used to just be all these like pans, and now they like create this cool UI that probably looks really great from a design perspective, but it's annoying, and I'm mad at Netflix for it now. So
yeah.
I guess I'm airing out all my grievances against big companies that I have on this podcast today.
Okay. You know what?
Um,
Strategy part therapy.
100%. Yep, 100%. We're not licensed counselors, but we will
So,
call it therapy.
yeah.
So I think kind of talking through customer retention, I think there's four kind of key points that I like to drive home when it comes to customer retention that at least we look at and we help our clients look at. Obviously, there's the personalization element, what I just talked about with Spotify. How are we helping kind of under customers or brands understand their needs and then using data to basically tailor those experiences based on past behavior. But then there's the consistency element, right? So not only are you personalizing, but how consistent can you be across all of your touch points, including social media, email, website, in store. But then I think there's two other aspects that you've touched on a little bit that I think are really important. One is the trust and transparency factor, right? We need to be honest with our customers about pricing, policies, when we make mistakes, because we know transparency builds trust, which in turn then fosters loyalty.
Yeah.
But then the other piece that we're learning as a business, right, and we're helping our customers, we usually help them on the PR side. And I think of all of the PR disasters that have happened. Proactive communication is so important, right? We need to make sure that we're not waiting on customers to come with us with problems. We're reaching out to them, asking them about their experience. I'm not saying we, but you know what I'm saying? Like, as a business, I think it's really important to think about what problems can you identify, what can you drive home with truth and transparency, but then how do you provide proactive communication to avoid kind of those pain points that someone's maybe encountering that you might not think about or that you might not know that they're going through.
Yes. Well, and I think everything kind of it's like puzzle pieces that build the bigger picture, right? Because trust and transparency also, like, it's the foundation that's going to help you have proactive communication. So an example I'm thinking of, and just because it's top of mind, when you think about elections, right, and things like that, no matter whether it's like PTA or anything, people want to know like what you stand for, and they want to be able to hear you say that, and they want to be able to investigate it on their own too, so they can make their own choice and their own opinion. And oftentimes that looks like having something in writing, right? So for us, like, it might be if you build a website, you have your company policy on your website in the footer, just some place where people can see in writing who you are, what you're about, and they can refer to it time and time again on their own time. And then as a company, it's your job to obviously do what you say you're going to do. You want to be integrous in what you do and let your yes be yes. Of course, we are all going to make mistakes. Nobody is perfect. No business is perfect. And I think just knowing that, and knowing like, okay, these are the core foundations of our business. This is what we've told people that we're going to do and who we are. And so in the times that we don't live up to that, that's where saying, you're sorry, or saying we are so sorry that like our product didn't live up to these standards, and we are going to do everything we can to make that right. And then you say it, you mean it, you do it. And so, yeah, there's grace for error because, again, no business is perfect, no person is perfect. But those two kind of pillars of retention, I think, are pivotal and key, and they just build upon each other so well. Like, if you start off authentic and you start off offering the resources of transparency to your customers, then yeah, whenever you inevitably have that goof up moment, it's going to help you be much more proactive in your communication.
Absolutely. No one's perfect, but it's always good to make sure that you're on the forefront because we've seen it a couple times where some brands have made some big mistakes. They take a little too long, and then people remember that for the rest of their lives, unfortunately.
Oh,
While it
yeah.
might not translate to everything fully, it still makes a big difference. So I
Yeah.
think those are really interesting points.
Yeah.
Now, as you know, I kind of like to talk through key strategies for how do we actually provide effective customer retention strategies, right? So, you've seen it, and I think there is an aspect of the graphic side that I'd like to talk through
Yeah.
because on one side, I think, a couple main key strategies that I recommend when it comes to customer retention is if you're an e-commerce business or some sort of products business, loyalty programs are really great because you can do like rewards, you can do little like incentivizations for purchasing things or frequent purchases. You can do tiered rewards, which are huge, right? You
Mhm.
can do personalized email marketing, subscription models, having excellent customer service. But I think the one thing that really sticks out that I think is really important is the personalized email marketing, right? We see a lot of our clients that do monthly email newsletters or some sort of like subscription service, things like that. So, in your mind, what is it like from a graphics perspective when we're driving personalized email marketing? How can brands or marketers really focus on having kind of that personalized feel with also a professional and like well designed looking email at the same time?
Yes, great questions. Good thing to think about and discuss. I think as far as the consistency goes, going back to that, it's something as simple as in every email, you're going to have an image that's going to capture someone's attention or be relevant to the body of the email. Like, what are you talking about? Again, going back to that idea we are very visual people. We live in a visual society. So, what is something that is visually engaging right at the top of the email? And then having something enjoyable at the bottom of the email too, right? An incentive that they can trust, whether it's just a well done kind of logo variation at the bottom of the email along with a disclaimer or anything like that. Or maybe it's a message if it's applicable. I don't know. Like um if you're selling dog food and you can just like find funny little gifs of dogs to put at the end of every email. I don't know, just something that's going to make people feel again that they can trust you, they know you, and those little touch points are I think really beneficial. And then as far as the customization side, I just think it works really well whenever you open up an email, and thank goodness for AI and softwares, because it helps us, like say, hi Caleb, like it is time for you to re-up your prescription or whatever it is. And even just the touch point of having somebody's name or the title of their business and the opening lines of your email makes all the difference, because it also kind of plays into the part of the human psyche that is a little not unfortunate, but we don't obviously like to talk about it a lot. We like to look at ourselves. We like to think about ourselves. We tend to be kind of self-centered creatures. And so whenever you have an email that's saying your name, it automatically just like brings you into whatever is being offered or whatever reminder it may be. It just
100%.
captures your attention in a really uh, organic way, in a meaningful way, but also just in a basic kind of like psychological function way.
I like that too, because we see that a lot, right? There's a lot of people that will go in and they'll put like the little merge format in there that's like, "Hey, so and so," and then they put a bunch of text, and you're like, "This looks like you sent this to 3,000 people, right?" Versus
Yeah.
like if you can make a really nice looking email, it's like, wow, they actually put effort. And obviously, you don't want to make it too professionally designed, right? Like there's the balance between authenticity and like having a well designed email, but it's really fascinating because people like those tools and it's really helpful, but then they forget to like make it authentic at the same time, not just personalized.
Yeah. Well, and if you can do the work as a company too to kind of discover who your clientele are, and maybe there's subgroups, right? So maybe you have the new mom, the toddler mom, and like the elementary school mom. All of those people, they're all moms, so they have that unifying factor, but then those age groups are vastly different, and the needs of those mothers and fathers are vastly different. um,
100%.
and so even if you say like, hey, Dawn, as a mom of two, and with one being in elementary school and a newborn, like we see the hard work that you're putting in. And then you have like links to two services, right? Here's a link to the diapers for the newborns, and here's a list to a couple of craft ideas for the older ones, whatever it is, like just taking the time to even go beyond the name insert, right? And say like, this is where the stage of life that you're in, and even call that out, because you can use, AI now, you can use so many things to, yes, group people, and it can be done in a really impersonal way, but it can also help you serve your clients so much better whenever you remember and you realize like, oh, this is what they're carrying, this is the stage of life that they're in. Does that make sense?
100%. And I think it comes well so well together on the tools because right, we always encourage our customers, whether a small or big client, you need to use some sort of CRM, email platform, things like that you can really differentiate, right? Because if we can go in on that example and tag someone as a parent of a 6-year old, and we know like most, and maybe like we go even further and say like 6-year old boy, right, and have that as a tag, like we think about like, okay, he probably likes Thomas the Train, or you can kind of start to assume,
Big.
yeah, Peppa Pig based on buying behavior, like what that individual would be. And obviously it will never be perfect, but how do we find kind of a generalization area, for example, right? Like Amelia is 2 now. So she's kind of getting into that phase where she's like Bluey, she likes Blippy, right? So we can kind of make assumptions that we're not going to push her into Minecraft right now because she might not be into that. So, you can obviously translate that into multiple different areas, but I think it's a really interesting point of like, how can you use a CRM to detail notes and use tags, right? To understand your audience better and use that to provide better recommendations because, with our clients, like it really makes a big difference when you remember someone's kid's name or
Yeah.
when their birthday is or what they did, they mentioned something big that happened on a client call. We
Yeah.
remember that next week and we have that conversation. Again, you want to bridge the authenticity, right? We don't want to just be writing notes and be like, all right, Johnny's birthday party was yesterday. Make sure we ask. But if you
Yeah.
can actually have a genuine conversation about it, I think it can go kind of a further step forward that we really don't realize how much of a difference that makes, which is, in my opinion, extremely important.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure.
And you know me, I'm a data nerd. So when it comes to key metrics, I wanted to talk through very shortly. I think there's a couple things that I really like to look at. And sometimes we like to overlook it, right? Because we always like to talk about like CLV, right? Customer lifetime value. It's the most important part. How much money are our customers making? But there's actually some really other interesting key metrics that I like to look at. So there's this term called customer retention rate, which is CRR. It actually measures the percentage of customers who continue buying from your brand over a given period, right? So we can look at like customers at the end of the period minus new customers acquired during that period, and then we divide that by the customers at the start of the period. Really fascinating stat because you can look at it from a 7-day trailing average, a 20 like you could look at it from every day and it would be really fascinating. But
Yeah.
I think that's something that we as marketers kind of overlook, right? Because the big thing is we look at customer lifetime value, but not only do we need to look at customer retention rate, but repeat purchase rate, right? So how many customers are actually making multiple purchases? So we take the number of repeat customers divided by total customers, and voila, there it is. We have it. Now, the other piece that I think and you've gotten a little bit more exposure to this on the market research side with some projects we've had. Net promoter scores is actually a really fascinating one as well. I think some people know what it is, some people don't, but it's actually, you can start taking some research within kind of your internal customer base. I know a lot of companies, they have these massive contracts with companies that take it every day and they're looking at their net promoter score on a year over year basis, on a month over month, even a day over day basis. But it's really fascinating because what it does is it measures customer satisfaction and likelihood to recommend your brand. And so it puts it in this score, and then basically high NPS scores or net promoter scores, they typically correlate with high retention rate. So it's actually like something you can kind of like filter on your own and kind of understand without looking at purchases, kind of how people feel about you and use that for, predicting future things, which is really fascinating.
That is so cool. I love the nerdy part of marketing. And I think that's something that as a more of a graphics person, I have so much more to learn. But I think that is just, again, data can really help people and it can really serve your business and those that your business serves. And it's how you use that, because all of those things of like, is our product serving clients well enough that they are organically going out and telling other people, right? Or are we having to kind of not force them, but are we having to like pull a lot of strings to get them to share what our product is through some sort of loyalty program or whatever it may be? And if you can do the work using the data on the front end to be like, okay, this is actually working or this is not, it's gonna bring those acquisition clients in a lot smoother and a lot easier.
100%. Well, I think it's something that we talk about, right? So there's the difference between graphically gifted, data gifted. I mean, there's probably like 35 that we could kind of talk through that. But what's really fascinating, right? We talk about this within internal meetings and to other clients and interactions. I think it's fascinating because you have some people that are really graphically gifted, that they could build the greatest content in the world. They have the most, like I've seen it time and time again. They have a really great Instagram feed. They have a really great client onboarding packet, guide, deck, and they struggle to get customers, right? Because sometimes their pricing is off. Sometimes they don't deliver on what they're looking for. Sometimes they're like, there's so many different factors, right? Lots of different things. But I think it's really fascinating because you have that, but then, the kind of the hard part about that is you don't have the data to know like, okay, how long are our clients are staying or what's causing them to leave. But then on the flip side, right, you can get way too focused on the data that every person that comes in your store is a data point now and is not a human being, or like we're not focused about the design. We want to get something out quicker because we know
Yeah.
there's obviously good and bad parts about each, but I think it's really fascinating because you look at it from one perspective and they're a lot different, but they both have their kind of challenges per se, which I think is something that gets overlooked, right? So when we're talking about challenges in customer retention, I think it's really interesting because we see this on the agency side, right? Sometimes we have client churn, sometimes we have complacency, and those seem to be the two biggest aspects of kind of customer retention that can be a challenge, right? You have complacency where businesses can focus too heavily on acquisition, they're neglecting, retention, things like that, which in my opinion, kind of the solution for that is you need to look at how do you implement retention strategies like loyalty programs or post purchase follow-ups that are going to keep your clients engaged, your customers. And then, the other side is if you're having high churn, it's unfortunately it's inevitable that you're going to have customer churn, but high churn rates are obviously a red flag. And so how do we, solve that? Well, we look at feedback tools. How do we understand why clients are leaving, right? How do we get to the core of what questions do we ask? We need to send a survey out. We need to talk about what's going on, and then obviously taking that feedback, right, and making those necessary changes to improve customer satisfaction.
Yes, I think that's so key. When I'm even thinking of, so there's a vitamin company called Ritual.
Yep.
I don't know if you've heard of them.
Oh yeah.
I really respect them as a company and love them because I think part of their, so going back to kind of everything that we've talked about thus far, they got me in as a consumer because of, the product itself and the science behind the product, just like the good practices behind the product. But also, whenever you get into the nitty gritty of like, okay, this looks really good, I want to be healthy, but what's it going to cost me? They're transparent with their prices, but then they also have that opt out feature or a pause feature. And so you don't have any any penalties if you need to opt out of using their service. And then if you have a bad month and your dog has to go to the vet and you have used all your phone money, you can snooze your order. And it's like a no cost penalty. And so I think whenever companies like use the data, like you were saying, use the data, use the looks to create one wholesome and integrated service for people, it just makes such a difference because then you are serving real people, and your business model and your business structure and how you use your marketing is tailored to a whole person because it functions like a whole person. Does
Yep.
that make
And
sense?
now you're a brand advocate, right? Even if you have to
Yes.
put it on pause, even if you cancel it, like
Yes.
that. I mean, quite honestly, let's be honest. We don't know the effects of each vitamin, right? We don't know. We're kind of relying on the fact that like, hey, this works. We know from science that like the vitamin most likely helps you, right? Like it's not like you're
We
taking
hope.
nothing. We hope. We hope. We don't know. But it's
Yeah.
the same thing, right, with AG1. I've become a brand advocate of AG1, but
Mhm.
quite frankly, if you look at AG1, it's a pretty expensive product on the market.
Yeah.
Um, a lot of the benefits seem to be a placebo, right? Of like, there's not really much data about like how much is in the drink, whether that powder drink is enough. I've had clients tell me that, like competitors, things like that, that like there's not enough vegetables or greens in it, that it's not your daily intake. But what's fascinating to me is they do an incredible job of like the pre and post purchase of getting people to buy in. They're absolutely everywhere, which cross channel marketing, like we talked about last week, where they're on podcasts, really big people are talking about it. And then after purchasing, they're sending you like, hey, are you enjoying it? Congrats, you're 15 days in, you're 30 days in. Those
Right.
things, again, I question every day, like, is this benefiting my body? Probably not, but it seems cool that I'm drinking greens, right? And so there's that aspect of like, obviously you want to offer valuable products or services, but as you continue to nurture that relationship, the trust factor is built and you're hearing these things, but you have this trust factor that you're most likely believing the business, not someone else, right?
Yes. Yeah. Well, it goes back to what we talked about too of, again, transparency. Like having the information on the front end for people to read and research on their own is just so key. So I'm not going to
100%.
harping on
No,
that, or maybe I
but
will.
we know it's true. We're
This
gonna
is
keep
it.
harping on it. Now, as we're wrapping up, as you know, we really like to talk about a case study, right? So, there's
Yeah.
probably millions of these that we could talk about. I will say the one other beef that I have is I reached Chick-fil-A Platinum, or whatever it is, and I didn't get like a loyalty for getting like 10,000 points. So Chick-fil-A needs to redo their loyalty program because I feel like
Oh,
I've spent
wow.
too much money and I haven't gotten a lot of stuff. So we need to figure out how we change that. But
Oh,
one thing from my research that I thought was fascinating was Sephora, right? So Sephora has a kind of a beauty insider program that
mhm.
they'll offer members exclusive rewards, personalized recommendations, early access to sales. It's
Yes.
tiered, so you've got Insider VIP Rogue. I mean, it's really fascinating. And I don't know, are you part of the Sephora? Have you had interactions with the Sephora at all?
I am not a Sephora girl myself. However, I
Fair.
have a good friend who is. And yeah, so
Okay.
I mean, there's been times when, she's gotten the email, and because she's on one of those tiers, yeah, she's gotten the email. We go to the mall because she's ready to get the preliminary sales for being a member. So yeah.
100%. But I think it's fascinating, right? Because you hear a lot about it. And it's one of those things that the further you do the research on, their offers are very targeted. They have a very loyal customer base. It seems like repeat customers are very high. They have a strong sense of like brand advocates, especially as the financial element of the world kind of gets tighter. People are still spending money. They're
Yeah.
choosing to put their dollars there, which is really fascinating. So I find it really fascinating because it seems like they've done an incredible job of really building that customer base that's loyal, that knows who they are, and they're actually rewarding them, which I think is really neat.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you just look at my example alone, I'm not part of anything Sephora related yet, we'll say. I don't know.
Yeah, you never
But
know. This episode might push you over the edge.
my But my friend is, and then she took me with her, and I got to see
Yep,
the sales firsthand, and I got to be taken into a Sephora store and location, and that's that organic marketing piece. That because Sephora has put these certain like guidelines or practices in place, then because people are people, and my friend wanted me to come with her while she was shopping, I got to be kind of an eyewitness or experience it secondhand, which then might influence me to be like, oh, wow, like it really is worth at least becoming a member. Even if I don't shop here all the time, I still, can get a discount or what have you.
100%. Love that. Well, as we're trying to wrap up, I have a couple key points, and I'm curious if you have any key points, takeaways that you want to share. But for me, there's three key points that I have. One, customer retention is vital for long-term business success. Two, personalized experiences, loyalty programs, and proactive engagement are key to keeping customers happy. There's a lot more to that, but we're keeping it very simple. And three, tracking your success with key metrics like customer retention rate, repeat purchase rate. I can't speak today, and
Yeah.
customer lifetime value are very important. So, do you have any other additions that you'd like to add on to that, Abby?
I think those are all good to keep in mind. I've said it too much, honestly, in this episode, but be trustworthy. All of these tools are great, but if you are not integrous in how you use them, uh, I don't think it's going to work out very well.
Amen.
So,
Amen.
yes, that transparency piece, I'm going to always, always harp on that, especially for customer retention. It just makes such a big difference.
That's fair. Some good thoughts and some very true stuff. So, well, as we wrap up episode number 3 of season 2, Club Conversations, it's been a very exciting conversation. Again, be looking forward to having David Neal on the podcast, having Abby. It's going to be quite the fun little adventure that we're going to take over in the next. We don't even know how many weeks we're going to go with season 2, but it's probably going to be a pretty long chunk. So I hope we're all ready. We're going to have some really great topics. And what's even going to be better is we're going to get some experts in here kind of as over the long term that are going to provide a lot better input than just me and Abby as well. So
Yes.
if you're listening this long without falling asleep, I highly encourage you to like, rate, and subscribe to the podcast on all of your preferred platforms. We are on YouTube now, which is pretty exciting. We've really built it out. We've got a really cool graphic designer that's building out some cool templates. I mean, it's great. You got shorts. I mean, what more could you want? So
Yeah.
again, shameless plug. Check out the pod. We've got a new website coming. It's going to be
And
pretty sweet.
leave a if you're watching, leave a comment if you have any like questions regarding anything that we've talked about. I think that that's something we can address in episodes to come. Is if you have a specific example or a pain point in your business, we would be happy to go to the round table and try to help you solve that. So,
AKA the weekly Monday morning team meeting where we get
yes,
so much done.
yes, we do. I love
That's awesome. Well, again, if you're listening, thanks again for taking the time to listen to this episode. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.